Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mama Pies Before the Lesson podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Smiley. Now, last week, we continued in the informational and expectational book of Leviticus. We saw the Lord, through Moses, continuously stress that the people should first love thy neighbor as thyself, and they should also have no other gods before him. Laying down the law, as Moses did through the wilderness years, it required more than just mandates and decrees. It required a renewing of the mind on the part of the children of Israel. When you're working, from a slave mentality, when that type of abuse, mistreatment, hurt and pain is all that you've known, it takes more than somebody telling you to be free. It takes you telling you from your very core that you're free and that you need to walk in it. It ain't going to happen overnight. It might not happen in a year or two. And for the children of Israel, it didn't happen over the course of 40 years. We saw the final instructional pieces relative to the children of Israel's understanding of how they were to conduct themselves once they reached the promised land. On Sunday, the title of the lesson is The Heart of the Law. Scriptural basis of our lesson is out of Deuteronomy, 10th chapter. Now, as we wrapped Leviticus on last week, we heard Moses admonishing the children of Israel to first understand the sabbatical significance of the seventh day. They also needed to understand the sabbatical significance of the seventh year. They needed to understand the significance of the seventh year of the 7 sabbatical years, totaling 49 years. And then on that next year, to celebrate Jubilee. Unfortunately, they never really learned that lesson. And even today, we still haven't grasped the power and the significance of a Jubilee. Rest, reflect, revere. Give rest to the land. Reflect on how the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt. Revere the Lord your God, and be ye holy, for he is holy. So the question that I have, and maybe you do too, is how did we get from there to here? Let's dig into this thing and try to figure it out. And hopefully, after today's conversation, we'll feel more personally in tune with and understanding of the challenges that our biblical heroes in the upcoming Sunday school lesson had to deal with. So if you like what you hear, click the button below and subscribe to our channel. Israel had continued at the foot of Mount Sinai throughout the book of Leviticus and through much of the book of Numbers. Israel doesn't really leave Mount Sinai until 2 years after their arrival, after their departure from Egypt. Throughout the book of Numbers, we see rebellion and the punishment of the first generation of the freed Israelites. We see them complaining. We see them, even his sister and brother, challenging Moses, questioning why he had married an Ethiopian or black woman, why God only spoke to him. They did this until the Lord set them in order, with Miriam having to endure a leprous disease. In Numbers, we see a representative of each tribe go over into the promised land to scout it out. Yeah, I said that right. We see a representative of each tribe go over into the promised land to scout it out. Based on the report of the majority that came back, the children of Israel refused as a whole to go over into the promised land. Only Joshua from the tribe of Joseph and Caleb from the tribe of Judah saw the land and the inhabitants thereof in a different kind of way. They emphatically told Moses to let us go up at once and possess it, for we are well able to overcome it. We also see Israel rebel against God. They rebel to the point where God tells Moses, I will smite them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and will make thee, Moses, a greater nation and a mightier than they. Moses then gets God to change his mind We see God tell the children of Israel that none of them over 25 will enter into the promised land. Then, and then only, they began their wandering years. During their wandering years, we see Miriam die and Aaron die. We see the sins of Moses that ultimately cost him his entry into the promised land. Finally, we see the Lord, through Moses, put in place the succession plan for the leadership of the children of Israel into the promised land. And the Lord said unto Moses, take thee Joshua, the son of Nun, from the lineage of Joseph, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay thine hand upon him. So as we arrive in the book of Deuteronomy, we see a series actually, of farewell speeches by Moses to the children of Israel. These people have worn down a whole generation. They prevented Moses from entering the promised land. They provoked God to the point of threatened disinheritance. And still, they have yet to fully trust and believe that God will do what he said he would do. Throughout all of this, Deuteronomy is a proclamation of a second chance for Israel. Those that now stood with Moses at the precipice of the promised land were not those that stood with Moses at the base of Mount Sinai. These people had been born and reared in the wild. In his final exhortations, Moses continues to remind them that it was the Lord that gave them this land, and all that they had to do was go and possess it. Moses knows that there is no earthly foe that can defeat the children of Israel unless they yield to their greatest temptation, which was to forsake God and to take up the worship of the Canaanite idols. So Moses then gives them a history lesson. He tells them, as they had witnessed in the wandering years, he highlights the point that obedience to God is equated to blessings, equated to health and prosperity. But disobedience to God would be equated to death, to curses, disease, and poverty. Moses reminds him of the covenant agreements, the 10 commandments, and the meticulous law that was laid out for them. He helps him to understand the journey from Sinai to Kadesh. He lets them know that the promise of Abraham is being fulfilled. The Lord God of your fathers makes you 1,000 times so many more as you are, and bless you as he hath promised. He continues in his dissertation relative to who to mess with and who to leave alone. He says, distress not Moab, distress not Ammon. However, he tells them, and when God gives you that land which he has promised, ye shall utterly conquer and cast out the nations that are there before you, regardless of the fact that they're greater and mightier than you. 7 nations, to include the Canaanites, shall you utterly destroy. Moses then reminds them that it was not because of their righteousness that they are now receiving the promised land, but it was a faithful fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that they will now be allowed to possess the land. Psalms 37 tells us, fret not thyself of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as a green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good, so shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. I have been young, and now I'm old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. So on Sunday, we'll see Moses having fought the good fight, finishing up his course, transitioning leadership, putting the children of Israel in remembrance of who they were always destined to be, and admonishing his people to remember the ties that bind, telling them to always keep God first in their life, telling them in so many words to seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all of that other stuff that you want in your life shall be added unto you. He tells them, and now Israel, what does the Lord require of you? But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul. So now we know God is a just God and a God of second chances. His word is true, and he will do just what he says. Jesus said in the book of John, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Looking forward to next week's lesson as we go back in and dig a little deeper here on the Before the Lesson podcast. Until next time, be blessed.
Been covered, and yet remain so many heights unknown. But now I face a foe